Hey everybody, I'm Bob Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today. Yep, you're moving around on me a lot. And we're we're here with the king himself, Fareed Haque. Hey Fareed, how you doing?
I'm always moving, always
Always move.
moving.
Well, before we get started, there's a couple of announcements that I have to make. One is I want to give a big shout out to a huge contributor here at Jazz Guitar Today, Joe Barth. Joe has been writing articles left and right and doing a lot of the written interviews, doing all the written interviews, actually. We've got a big cover story coming up next month with Pat Metheny, which is I've already seen a bunch of it. It's all written this time. Great stuff. So, Joe Barth, you're the man. You're doing amazing work, and everybody in the community should really appreciate what you bring to the table. Also, if you aren't subscribed to us, please do. Subscribe to the magazine. It's free. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, all those things that you know how to do. It makes a difference. And if you go to the YouTube, please like, share, follow. That makes a big difference because what it does is it sends recommendations of our music or our programming to other people who they feel may be interested in it because a lot of people don't know who we are, what we do. So we really appreciate all your help in helping us grow this. We've been at this about 6 years now, and it's a labor of love, and help us continue it. So with that being said, Fareed, how are you? Talk to me.
Well, man, I just have to reiterate that what you guys do is so important, not only because of the great interviews, but the sense of community that you guys are generating and a sense of family that we have here at
Thank you.
Jazz Guitar Today. I think is
Well,
is
you know
really
what's
different.
interesting? The numbers are not like the numbers are not huge numbers because there aren't that many jazz guitarists in the world.
Right.
But the thing that we have over everybody else is the dedication of our subscribers and our listeners. The group that we have is very, very engaged with what we're doing, which tells me that there's a lot of passion out there. We need to keep
Yeah.
growing it, of course, but the passion that we feel coming back from, all the artists and all the players, whether they be professional or amateur or however, or just people love to listen. It's just tremendous, and we really do appreciate that. So thank you, Farida. I really appreciate it. So I know something that you wanted to talk about a little bit is your health.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with this for a minute. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastasized prostate cancer in my lymph nodes, in my bones, in my body, everywhere. And I was given about 12 months. And I had no symptoms. I was perfectly healthy as far as I go. It's just the universe took a left turn on me there. And so for the past year, I've been dealing with that. And I just wanted to announce that I am 100% in remission, no uh, perceptible cancer, no scans, 100% clear. And, it changes a lot of your life perspective when the universe gives you a wake up call. I mean, I've always been a kind of a pretty healthy, pretty tough, drive all nights, party all night, play all day, do sessions, do gigs. People know that I have a lot of energy. And that energy is great, but it sometimes can use some focus. And this certainly has helped me focus. Um, when the universe comes along and says, you got a year, you got 12 months left,
Yeah.
that shakes your shit up. And so, you know, we lost Pat, we lost Russell Malone, we've lost so many greats recently. And,
Right.
it puts a lot of things in perspective. And it does make you realize that we are a community, we are a family, and we have to to celebrate each other as much as we can while we can.
Boy, from your
I
own, go ahead.
Yeah, and I had to make some decisions. So I took a little time while I was doing my chemo and recorded about 5 albums. And now we're in the process of, now that the prognosis is good and I have a little time, I'm wrapping those up. So we've got the finishing touches on the new Garage Mahal album, finishing touches on a couple of classical albums that have been important projects for me. A new album with Tony Monaco and myself, trio, Greg Fundus on drums. An album with Paul Wertico and Larry Gray. It's all original music. And a real exciting project with Frank Catalano. Me playing an old school jazz guitar, playing mostly McCoy and Rassan tunes, very keyboard oriented music, but on guitar. And so probably, 5 to 7 new projects that I did on my bucket list. And now hopefully we'll get those out as the celebration of my return to the scene, as it were.
Well, if I had a drink, I would toast it to you. I would say, here's to many, many more. Well, as a lot
Thank
of
you,
people
brother.
know, I had a heart attack in March, and
Right?
I, they told me I was lucky to get out, that I was there, or I should have died that day. And
Jesus.
so
Right.
that's even more compression than a year. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
that's like that. If you weren't here right now, you would not make it through the day. So, it was one of those kind of things.
Right.
I actually had the heart
Man.
attack in the hospital. I was in
Right.
the
Right.
emergency section of the cardiac area of the hospital, and they said, that I wasn't having a heart attack when I got in there, but while I was there, I decided to have a heart attack. Which, if you're going to have a heart attack, that's the place to do it, because
Right.
they had
Right.
me in surgery in about 15 minutes and took care of,
Oh my
the
God.
imminent danger. And then I had 2 more procedures
Sure.
later that month, but um, yeah, it's I understand wake up call, and also my daughter was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and she doesn't smoke.
Oh my God.
Around January, December, January, and she's doing really, really well, knock on wood. So there's been a lot of that crap going around, and a lot of health stuff as we all get older. There's some realities based with that. And Fareed, I just want to say that when I heard about you, I was like, what? I was blown away. I just, because that was before I had my issues, and I was just blown away. And I am so glad that you're okay. I mean that
Thank you, brother.
sincerely. I am so glad that you're okay.
Thank
I
you.
I think of you as not only as a great musician, which you are, and all the things that go along with that, but I think of you as a friend, and so I'm really glad that you're okay. Moving along, because otherwise we'll all have to get our towels out here. Moving along. Um, so tell us about some of the projects. It's interesting. You've got a big classical background,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so you're going to do a couple of you've done a couple of classical albums.
Yeah. I'm very into classical guitar, and I have a duo with Goran Ivanovic. I just did an album with Dan Lapel of the music of Joel Harrison. It's gorgeous music,
Really?
you know. Yeah, it's just beautiful music, and Joel is a sweetheart of a guy, and so that record is coming out shortly, and then we'll be doing some promotions of that. My reality as a classical guitarist is, there's a ton of great classical guitarists out there,
Yeah.
and what can I bring to the table that is going to add something to the scene? What can I bring to the table that is unique and, well, dare I say, needed?
Right.
and one of the big things is that I'm an improviser, obviously,
Well,
and
yeah,
I improvise not only in a jazz style but in a classical style as well. I think if you go on YouTube, you can find some videos of me playing classical pieces that require cadenzas and then
right,
improvising those cadenzas as they would have been done 250 years ago. Um, Obviously, my work with Goran involves me playing both fingerstyle, classical style with nails, and with a pick and improvising a lot. There's some music out there that most classical players, in my opinion, struggle with because it demands an understanding of jazz or at least modern harmony
right,
and an understanding of Latin rhythms.
right.
So I've recorded uh, a bunch of music. Federico Monpo, who's one of the few Spanish impressionists who wrote music for guitar. But he also wrote a lot of piano music, and a lot of that piano music translates beautifully to guitar. Uh, Monpo was raised in Catalonia in the north of Spain, and his parents were bell makers.
Wow,
So he spent his entire life around the overtone series, even as a child. And so his pieces have these incredible harmonies, and all of them, like, there's one piece in C sharp, and you're like, well, this can't work on guitar. It's in C sharp. Well, it turns out that it's almost all C major 7 sharp 5, which is basically A augmented,
right.
right? And so there, and of course all those harmonics and things work out. And so I started working through these pieces, and they're just beautiful. Um, there's some music by Ponce, which I've always wanted to record, that I'm in the process of recording. I did a transcription of the etudes for the left hand by Camille Saint-Saëns, which are perfect guitar pieces. And if you
Mhm.
imagine the playing only, I think that Saint-Saëns wrote them for a pianist who had lost the use of their right hand, and so they were able to. And if you think about this on the piano, it's not that far from this on the guitar,
Right.
you know. And so a lot of these etudes actually do work similar techniques on the guitar that as they would on the piano,
Do you play piano?
and enough. Yeah, I do. I took piano lessons and played in a few competitions when I was in high school.
Oh, well, do you play
You
piano?
know, I don't as much anymore because of the nails, but I can do a
Right.
recording session and I can play a funky Wurlitzer part all day. I'm that guy. You want funky Wurlitzer? Just call this guy.
A lot of people don't know what a Wurlitzer piano is. That was
Their
that
loss.
that predated Rhodes.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. NIU was giving away. So I shouldn't say giving away, throwing away. I don't know, 40 Wurlitzers because they were replacing them back in the day with DX7s.
DX7s, right?
Remember when the digital keyboard, like, wow, this is amazing,
I remember when they
you
came out.
know, right? And so I pulled up because they were all piled on the street. They were throwing them out. So I pulled up in the middle of the night with a van and packed as many as could fit in my van, and
Wow.
like a ghost in the night. And I gave all the Wurlitzers to my friends and kept one for myself. So
I
that's a
you know,
great sound.
I like a lot of people played in high school bands and rock bands, not the marching band.
Sure.
And we had a Wurlitzers because we couldn't afford Rhodes. Rhodes were expensive. They were
Yep.
they were a
Yep.
lot of money. They were $800-900 and more at the time. And if you got the one with the built-in amp and everything, you were up in the well over $1,000. It was that was a lot of money back in 1960 9 1966 67.
Right.
And
Right.
Wurlitzers, of course, they were a smaller keyboard too, which
Yeah.
which is great. But yeah, no, I wow, that brings back a bunch of memories. And you went and picked up that reminds me, the different story here, but um back in the day, everybody was playing a country gentleman. This was Beatles era type stuff. And
Right. Right,
Everybody wanted a country gentleman or at least a 335. I mean, at least something like that.
right.
And so I
Or a
went to
casino or something.
yeah, I went to Kenmore Music in Buffalo, New York, on Delaware Avenue, and I told them, I don't have a lot of money to spend. And they said, well, how much can you spend? And I said, I don't know, 60, $70, something, something like that. This was 66, 67. And they took me downstairs in the basement, where all the junk was to like pick out
Come
something.
here. Come here. Come on
Yeah.
down here. Come on down here. I got some stuff to show you.
Yeah. Well, all right. But downstairs, there was probably, and I'm not exaggerating, there were probably 35 or 40 Les Pauls out of cases, stacked like firewood. We're talking, Black Beauties, we're talking 58 standard, the things that now are going for, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of
Right,
dollars. And he said, you can have any one of those you want for $100 if you can just stretch to that. And I could
right.
have stretched. I mean, I could have gotten $100, but I didn't want a freaking Les Paul. This was before Beano. This was before I knew anything about Beano or anything like that. What was going on? I wanted.
Man, they must have fallen off a truck. I'm sure that's what happened. They just fell off a truck
No, this
and they
was
just
a
happened by.
this was a big music store, and no, they just they bought them and couldn't move them, and so they
Yeah.
were down
You
there.
know,
What? Go ahead.
that whole mafia thing of like, oh, where'd you get those? Oh, they just fell off a truck,
Yeah, no, I know.
And
I do believe me. I know. I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I I got to be careful how much I say because I am a witness protection program. So you know,
I went to with my son when I was on the road and he came with me up for some gigs. And we went to that Youngstown, Ohio,
okay,
right? Which is just around the corner from Buffalo. It's all in that little area,
yeah,
Pennsylvania,
yeah,
Lake Erie. And we went, it was just a strip of Italian restaurants in Youngstown, Ohio. That's how Richard Pryor talks about it.
yeah.
And every place we went to, they were speaking Italian.
Oh yeah.
And our waitress was, she had just gotten here from Sicily, and
Well, back in the
I felt like
day,
I was
now I'm a
in
little older too.
Goodfellas.
I'll be 74 next month, September.
Oh my God, you look
And
great, dude.
well,
You look
thank
great.
you. Considering I just had a anyway,
Yeah,
I'll be 74, and when I was growing up, there were people's grandmothers living with them that did not speak English. They either spoke, they would speak Yiddish, they would speak Italian, they would speak, um, let me think, Spanish, some, but
sure,
mostly
sure. Yeah,
mostly Italian and Polish and German. Those people,
yep, yep.
there was,
I can see that.
and their grandmothers they did not speak English, and they were like, they were there. I mean, that was part of the deal. And
Right.
the
Yep.
There was Italian neighborhoods and Polish neighborhoods, and and you being in Chicago area, that's still probably alive and well, and living.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I played so many shows back in the day with that had an ethnic aspect to them, whether they were weddings in Cicero, Illinois,
yeah,
with bridesmaids rolling on the floor fighting over who knows what gossip that was going down. I played. I mean, I always laugh because I coached this half Muslim, half Catholic, coached so many grandpas through the
yeah.
hamotzi at bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs that I could still recite those. You know, I played tons of lounge music gigs where we had to pull out the tarantella, we had to pull out the this, we had to pull out the that, and you don't realize it at the time, but man, it was rich. It's a rich time in Chicago. And then you
Everybody,
go to the South Side, you're in another universe.
every club restaurant owner that I worked for in Buffalo was Italian, every one of them. And I
Right?
worked there for a lot of years. They were all Italian. Anyway, let's talk about guitar and
I
music and stuff like that. So you got 5 records coming out.
yeah.
They're in
Uh,
projects, and you're going to be at the Rocky Mountain Art Shop Festival.
yep. I'll be at Dazzle this coming September 6th and 7th.
All right.
with Garage Mahal. With Garage Mahal. Then the
Tell,
eighth
tell
were
people
in
tell people what
Vale.
Garage Mahal is.
Well, Garage Mahal is pretty known in the jazz band scene, the
Right.
jam band scene. Um, it's Kai Eckhart on bass, uh, myself, Oz Eselton, who's just an incredible keyboardist,
Right.
um, and Hassan Hurd, who's plays with Fishbone, super funky uh, Oakland drummer
Right.
from the roots of the funk. And so Garage Mahal is what it sounds like. It's a bit of the formal elegance of world music
Right.
and a bit of the street of funk and earthiness. And so we bring those elements together. Um, and in a way, it's sort of like if a Chicago raised street smart jazz guitar player started playing world music. It has that kind of vibe to it. And Kai is that way. Kai is half German, half African, North African, Liberian. Oz is Egyptian, and uh, and then Hassan is pure Oakland, man, and grew up in the churches and just plays his ass off. And so it's super fun. And the new album is super fun, and we're excited to be back together. I get to play my hybrid guitars. I get to play uh, with distortion and play. I have a beautiful 1970s Ibanez Bob Weir, one of those Bob Weir
Yeah, of
guitars,
course. Yeah.
all ash body. I love those guitars. It's super fat. And then all my Gallup guitars, and really have a pastiche of sounds. A lot of 12 string, a lot of acoustic on these records, kind of funky acoustic. Um, it's just a joy to work with this band. They're just
So,
so much fun and
so you're going to
so
be out
different.
in Colorado prior to the Rocky Mountain Art Shop Festival with those guys.
Yeah, then I go back home and I do some couple of days producing a record for a friend of mine, and then I come back to Colorado and do the Rocky Mountain Archtop. And this year they have me doing something cool. I'm doing two shows at Dazzle, duet, one with Ted Ludwig
Right.
and one with Eldon Kelly.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I had talked to Peter Henriksen about was showcasing the Archtop in its different roles in music. You know, of course, we all think about jazz and we think about, the modern jazz players, the Pat Metheny's, um, Gilad Hexelman, and all these New York hip cats, and Bobby Broom, and all these great, wonderful players. Russell, obviously. Um, but the Archtop, has a history, and there's a tradition of archtop music, and the roles I think are meaningful. So the role of the archtop in an organ trio is one thing that is an aspect that is important to explore. The role of the archtop as a rhythm guitar in a rhythm section, where it's
Right.
that old school stuff. That's a thing. It's not just something you can learn out of a book. You have to experience that and learn it from someone who knows it. And then more to the point is the role of the archtop as an accompanying instrument.
Right.
You know, and so this year, rather than me playing all my fast notes, I'm going to be uh, I'm going to be diving into a couple of sets with different jazz singers,
Wow.
and we're just gonna talk down some keys, talk down some tunes, and then I'm gonna play an intro, accompany the verse, accompany the song, and get in, play a little unaccompanied solo, and get out. This is the kind of thing that Howard Roberts did, that Barney Kessel did, that Joe Pass and Ella
Obviously,
obviously
yeah,
did.
Joe passed it, yeah. That's
And it's a great art form, and I don't want it to be lost. You know?
it's challenging. I mean, that's
Well,
challenging.
it does put together all of the skills that a
Right.
jazz guitarist needs in one place, and you have to be able to access those skills
Right.
spontaneously. One of the things that we did at my time at NIU at the university was I would make all of my students accompany singers, and they were always shocked at how first of all, challenging it was.
Right.
So I'd literally have a guitar class with 5, 6 jazz guitar player students, and a singer would come
Right.
in and say, "Here's 5 songs that I know, and these are the keys I do them in. One, two, let's go." And they'd have to jump in, and or in some cases they had to play an intro for a ballad. How do you do that? How do you follow the breath of a singer? Don't just count and play in time, but how do you actually interact with that? Um, there's a beautiful video of myself and Tammy McCann, who's just a tremendous Chicago area singer, produced her last album, and then we did a couple of concerts that were videotaped, um, and playing duo, and it's a beautiful sound, and it can be very spontaneous because there's so many flexibilities that you can bring to the art form. Um, so many more colors you can bring to than say the piano, for example.
You
Um,
have to, one of the things that you have to learn, I've said this a million times. I apologize, everybody, that I trained as a singer as well as a guitar player. And I actually studied classical voice. I wasn't very good at it. I've
mm,
said that a million times, but I tried real hard. But one of the things you have to keep in mind is the voicings on the guitar not getting in the way of the voice of the register of the voice.
oh,
'Cause
absolutely.
yeah, that can get pretty messed up. You just can't do this. You've got to you alluded to it already. You got to follow the breath. You've got to you know anticipate where they're going to be and where they're not going to be, and it's easier for a piano to stay out of the way than it is for a guitar player to stay out of the way. you know
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is to be able to know when you're following and when you have to lead and when you have to help. Sometimes you have to give that note, to the singer,
yeah, I know.
you
I've
know.
worked with some
And,
piano players that didn't understand that concept.
yeah, and if you give them the note and you give them something, it can be the difference between this kind of inspired interaction. Tammy and I would get into this where I would feed her and she would feed me music, and we would just go into these amazing places.
Yeah.
And rarely, I would say probably, ever, and and mostly because not that we couldn't stumble.
Right.
You're always on the edge of that cliff,
Well, if
but
not
if
doing that,
someone's holding
you're
you
not having
up,
fun. Yeah.
right, right. And so this will be exciting to showcase that, and of course with Ted and with Eldon and Dazzle, I'll get to play plenty of fast notes. So
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's no shortage of opportunity with those guys. You'll.
yeah,
By the way, I did listen. I did listen to him. Elvin,
uh-huh.
Elvin, what's it?
Eldon,
El,
Eldon Kelly.
Eldon Kelly. Yeah, you mentioned him to me the other day, and I was really impressed. I was very impressed. I
He's a
went.
very unusual, very musical cat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I went and watched about um, maybe 10 of his videos of shows and things that he's done. By the way,
right.
that's a good thing. People that are interested in getting my interest in you as an artist, YouTube, 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 YouTube. Don't send me your latest, album or CD or anything like that. I want to see what you do live and with people. I want to see how you perform live with, either solo or I want to see how you perform with other musicians. I want to get a feeling for your personality. Um, and so that's just a whole parenthetic statement that I'm making that I do.
Well, it's interesting because
I almost do 100% of my research. It all starts with video, YouTube, put the
yeah,
name in, watch, and then from there, if you capture my interest, then I'll go in and do your Wikipedia if you have one, or I'll go in to read your bio. I'll go in and because I do spend time with every one of these interviews, but more and more, it all starts with video. So if you're not doing videos,
well,
you need to. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you're right, man. It's an interesting world now where you can't really hide,
Right.
and there isn't that, privacy, which is a whole other issue, but there isn't that image that one can project or create.
Well,
you
there's
know,
so many.
and I just noticed that, and you've mentioned this before, and I didn't really think about it until it keeps happening. Like I did Ted Ludwig's concert series, and the guys in the band were like, "Man, that was so much fun, and you were comfortable with the audience, and everybody had a good time, and it was easy." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, they're paying money to come be entertained and moved and educated, all that, but at the it has to entertain on some level, and if you're worried, the audience is going to be even more worried, and I have gone to some shows where I see excellent players in situations where, man, I know these guys are really good, but I am really ready to
I'm
go
not feeling it.
home, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's
So I,
so,
I think it's important to interact and create a connection.
I want to see what you really do. I mean, there's so many people that are so good on the instrument technically. If this was the game of golf where the guy that gets the ball in the hole in the shortest amount of strokes, it would be a whole different thing. But this is art, you know, and
Right.
um, and I want to see how you feel with your instrument. I want to see if you are conscious of your audience. I just want to get a feeling for you as an artist. In the studio, the other thing that there's so many things to hide behind in the studio. How was this recorded? How many how many overdubs did you do? How much correction is there here? Did you shift the time?
Right.
How long did you guys stay on the grid? What's really going on here? Now, I will say that's an art form in itself because Scott Henderson and I have
It
that
sure is.
discussion. Scott says, and I judge those things very differently. Judge is a tough word. If
I know
you're
what you mean.
if you're making a musical movie, which is what Scott Henderson does, in
Sure.
the movies, because I do acting and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you take multiple cuts, you edit, you do this, you do that, you add and then you create the
An
piece,
experience.
an
An
experience.
experience.
And that's
Right.
valid. I mean, Scott's latest record is genius. It's absolutely fantastic, Scott Henderson.
Oh, I
But
got to check it out.
if you're going to be playing straight ahead jazz, let's say, standard tunes or stuff like that, and you're going to give me your version of, you name it tune, that's not what I'm expecting. If you're creating original
Sure.
music and you're doing compositions, the Joel Harrison pieces and all that, it's a whole
Mhm.
different ball game. So, and a lot of
I
what,
have a
go ahead.
I have a criteria for that, and for those fans out there who would be so kind as to check out my recordings. I spend a lot of time in production on the music,
Right,
but every solo is one take,
right.
one complete take. I don't mess around with sliding things and fixing notes. I mean, occasionally if there's like, a string broke or something or
Yeah.
some little thing, I might go, well, that's just, but almost, you know, if I have a solo spot for somebody's record, I'll send them, two or three beat takes. There's a piece with Consider the Source that we did during pandemic, and what they hear is my actual put the phones on, press play,
Yeah.
play, and that's what it is.
Well,
And because
let me clarify something about that. Known artists, guys that I've seen 150 videos of, and been around. I've sat in their audiences and listened to them play. That I throw all that out. If you've got to do something in the studio where you got to, that's fine. But if you're a new guy and you're breaking in
sure,
and you're going to play Autumn Leaves and you're
right.
going to send it to me, I don't want that. I want to see you play Autumn Leaves. I want to see you play Autumn Leaves in front. If you're going to play Autumn Leaves for me, fine. It's a great piece.
Right,
It's a great piece. It's a great piece of work. Or There Will Never Be Another You, or whatever it is, you know. But I want to see you do that in front of an audience. Now, guys
sure,
like
sure,
Fareed
sure.
Haque, Pat Metheny, and it's so forth and so on. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of videos of you guys playing in front of audiences where we know what you are. I mean, we know
Sure.
you're the real deal and you've got all this together. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about if you want to get noticed and you want people to
Sure.
notice you, not just me, but other people notice you, you know,
Right.
show us what you're going to do, show us who you are, give us, show, as somebody
Right.
said in a recent novel, show us some leg,
Yeah, jazz is an honest music, and it
Right.
needs to be somewhat honest. Uh, I love the Frank Catalano record. I think a very underexplored texture is a 12 string and acoustic guitar
Yeah.
with jazz. And so when I'm playing these McCoy Tyner tunes with these like fourthy things, I a lot of times I'll do a 12 string and then mult it because it just has, I mean, a piano, right, has three strings per note, right? So that's
Right.
a mult right off the bat. So, kind of creating that same sound with the guitar, and it's just a beautiful sound. And then to kind of have Frank, I don't know if you know Frank's playing, but he has the biggest tenor sound, you know, I've
Right.
ever heard live, right up there with, all of the greats. And so to have that with acoustic guitar underneath it, it just creates this really unique bed. And so I love the act of producing
Right.
music, but there still has to be that in the jazz world, particularly, there has to be a sense of the spontaneity and the edge and the moment. And so it's always exciting to find that balance point.
Yeah. I
And
hope. I hope I.
so the
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so the new record with Frank is, like I say, it's a lot of this kind of uh, big tenor and Chicago influenced music, Rasan and uh, Sonny Fortune from the McCoy Tyner days, um, some of uh, some of Frank's tunes, and the record with Paul Wertico and Larry Gray. It features a lot of these Latin tunes that I've arranged um, with reharms and sort of a beautiful jazz approach to some of these boleros and traditional Latin tunes that aren't that well known. Um, and so that's going to be a beautiful sound. But using all these different guitar textures has always been something that has been a bit of my signature and very exciting for me. And so all these records are going to have a ton of cool sound.
Well, you're one of the few guys that can pull that off. I mean, you can play authentically on a nylon. You can play authentically. I mean, you could, you're, you've got a whole lot of different styles that I'm going to use mastered. You're legitimate on each one of these styles that you address. You're not
You know,
just. Go ahead.
Chicago's an important part of that. Chicago's an important part of that because Chicago really is an environment that embraces authenticity.
Right.
And if you can play the blues in Chicago, the blues is part of music all over the world, whether it's Indian music, whether it's
Oh,
Latin American music, whether it's Irish music. The blues is in there, and there are a lot of particularly Western traditions kind of skate around the emotional depth of some music, and the blues forces you to face it head on. And
good blues does.
I think the blues does, and I think that has really helped me reach an authentic place in the musics that I love because you have something to compare it with. Like I want this classical music to have the blues. I want this indie fusion tune that I to have the blues in it. And I think that's really powerful and important, and people respond to it because it's music that is talking the common emotional language that all people all through the world share, and it seems to make a difference when that authenticity is embraced, and a lot of folks are afraid of it. You play the real blues and people are like, ooh, it's a little too real for me.
As an actor, I mean, everything. I'm sitting here today. I'm still taking acting lessons. You've taken private lessons, class lessons. Authenticity and coming, and finding the character and staying in the character for every speech and being authentic to that character is everything. So when I started studying acting 6 years ago, um, I took the Meisner technique and a bunch of things that, the acting stuff, and authenticity is everything. It's just everything. And then I started putting that into my music, into my own performances and stuff like that. And then observing other people What am I seeing here? In other words, like I started
Sure.
putting I'm an actor, a casting director, if you will. Would I cast this guy in that role telling me that story? You follow what I'm
Right.
saying? And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
answer to that question is most of the time, no. And and it's like that's why I said, in music, I mean, it's almost like I want to recategorize some music. I want to put the the athleticism of people that can shred all over the place, and judge that on just what that is. And then,
Mhm.
people that are, authentically emotional and conveying and all, it's a whole different thing. And that's why I want to see people, like I said, actually perform. Um,
Well, I think a lot of folks, a lot of musicians, particularly today, because of the internet generation, really confuse craft with art.
oh, absolutely.
And and I think there's a huge distinction that a lot of teachers, a lot of players aren't making as much as they could. They used to. It was essential. It
Right,
used to be essential. Craft was important, of course. It always is important, but you know, having a communicative element to your art was essential. It was central, and because of the internet, some of that is lost. And I think people are shocked when they hear, you know, me live. People always are, you know, man, that was so much fun. We had a
right,
great time, and and then I see other cats who are, excellent players, but they really think that their job is to play well.
right.
Fuck that. Nobody cares if you play well.
Uh,
That's not about it. It's not about that at all. I play well. I don't even care about that. A lot of
well,
times I'll put solos on my record that I think are working, and there's like a mistake in the middle of it. And I'm like, no, I just got to embrace the honesty of what that is. And I
yeah.
think that's
How
super
how come they
important.
don't like me? I just played that perfectly. How come there nobody cares? I remember saying
Right.
that to
Right.
myself one time. I got off stage one night and I thought, God, I really didn't go over that well tonight, and I that was the best performance, in my own judgment of that I ever did. Sang the notes where I
Right.
wanted to
Right.
put them. Everything was like, and nobody gave a shit. And I go, well, okay, what's missing here? And what was missing there was connection, of course. What's
Sure.
interesting is, getting back to or talking about that what if I was to manage people or coach people in performance, singers or musicians, I would say, what do you know about this piece of music? What music are you going to play tonight, or what's going to be your show for next week? What do you know about that
Right.
music? Did you compose that music, or if you compose, what mood were you in? What story did you want to tell? I would give me the whole backstory about what this
Right.
piece of music is for you. If you don't have a backstory, if you're not telling a compelling story, then I don't want to hear your bullshit story. And so if you get a new
Well,
song,
yeah, and I only play music, and I've made a commitment to this. And because there was a time at university where it was all about, how many songs did you know?
right? Oh, but if you want to
You
work,
know,
that was the problem. You had to know, you had
you
to have
know,
repertoire. Let me finish this. Let me just finish
and
this.
I,
Let me finish this for 1 second because I think this is important.
yeah,
If you're playing or if you're a singer or a player, you need to read the lyrics. I don't
yes,
care if you're, you
yeah,
don't need to know the melody. I mean, and you need to understand what is the story that behind these lyrics, and can I tell that story? The Frank Sinatra thing. If he didn't like the lyrics, he couldn't relate.
sure.
He didn't do the song. Your turn. Sorry.
So same thing. I was just going to say basically the same thing, which is I committed myself at a certain point to only play those songs that I had something to say about. Frank Catalano is the same way, and that's a Chicago thing to really, have some statement, some meaning. The song has some meaning for you. The composition has some meaning for you that you want to share. That you have some story to tell. Frank and I had a moment in the studio where I had written a bunch of tunes for him. He said, "I love these tunes, but I can't record these next week." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I haven't lived with them. I don't have a story about them yet." And I had to stop and be like, "Well, I respect that."
I like that guy.
And yeah, yeah. Frank he's a piece of work, but I love him dearly.
Yeah.
And so one of those songs at some point, um, but it's important to be able to say, I play this melody in a way that's meaningful, that has some weight to it, that has some intention to it, not
Right,
just that I'm playing it correctly or playing it, the way. In fact, the tunes that I like the best are the tunes that I have gotten to understand, gotten to love in a way that I play them my own way, my
right,
own harmony, my own phrasing, with my own quirks on the melody,
right.
and I think it has to be that way. And if you haven't gone through that, I mean, Javon Jackson's a great tenor player and knows a million tunes. I've been in situations where they call a tune that he knows but doesn't love, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not playing that."
Yeah. We have a
Good
few.
for him,
And then you gotta reconcile that with Lonnie Smith, Dr. Lonnie Smith, who said, if you look out and they're not doing this, we aren't doing our job. You know, so
and that's got to be part of it for sure,
gotta
for sure.
gotta swing.
You know,
Listen, I want to
yeah,
before we wrap this up, I want to make sure that you can tell all the stories that you want to tell for today. Where are we at? You've got 5 records, in the queue coming, all
yeah. I'll
done.
send you a list so we can share some of that information.
In print,
But yeah,
whatever.
yeah, but there's a bunch of records coming down the pike, a couple about to be released, and a bunch that are almost done, and it's all kind of a celebration of me being, back to life, clear of this cancer, and
Yeah,
just diving back in. I'm going to be a little more selective about the music I play and the shows I do. I'm not doing any more sideman work.
right.
Um, I'm just going to focus on the things that are important to me, and so it's going to be a creative time, and I'm excited and very grateful
Man,
to
you're playing
the
you're
music
playing
scene.
great. I saw you play something the other night, and man, you haven't missed a thing. I mean, you're playing great. I mean, you really
Man, I iced the shit out of my hands when I was getting chemo. Like, I put my hands in ice buckets. I was like, "Ah, freezing," but
are.
I got not one bit of neuropathy. They say you could lose feeling in your hands, and I was
Yeah,
terrified of that. And man, I mean,
yeah.
no,
Are those 13s on there?
yeah,
Are those
13s with a
13?
15 on top, with a 15 on top.
All right. A little bit of the Pat Martino vibe. He put a really
No, not a little bit of the Pat Martino, a lot of the Pat Martino vibe.
Okay.
Oh
I,
man,
I was
easy.
being careful. Well, this
No, no, you
format,
don't have to be careful.
yeah, this format is more of a podcast conversation than it is quote unquote an interview. I want people
Sure,
to understand that this is a conversation between the two of us on just stuff. Um,
I
so,
love it.
and then you're going to be out in Colorado, and you're going to be playing some gigs in Chicago, and you're
Yeah,
all
I'm playing the. We've got the world music group that I'm directing, co-directing, is got an album that's almost done. That's a 14 piece world music group.
wow.
Um, then I'll be at the Louisville Guitar Festival in October, the Rhode Island Guitar Festival in October, um, and doing more performances with Goron, with my band,
So tell me,
and
I want to interrupt you
then
for a second. Joel Harrison, you're doing a project on Joel
yeah,
Harrison's music. Tell me about that.
Joel is a wonderful. You know Joel, obviously. He does the alternative guitar summits,
Yeah, I
and
actually just
he
met just met him, and I'm blown away by his composition, his playing, and what a cool guy he is.
well, yeah, he's a sweetheart. He wrote a bunch of really nice music for two guitars, classical guitars. And Dan is a great classical guitarist, Dan Lapel out of New York, who's a friend of mine. And so Joel reached out to me to record this music, and I just hooked him up with Dan. And so the two of us went into a beautiful studio in upstate New York, Dreamland Studios,
Yeah,
Dreamville, something in upstate New
yeah,
York.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
And oh man, they had like $1 million worth of microphones at each of us. I had my fleta. I had just got my fleta, so I've used a 1962 fleta on the recording, which just sounds great. And beautiful music for two guitars, very kind of modern, Ralph Towner-ish, if you will,
Wow.
but then with some rock elements and some uh, more really beautiful texture elements. So very good stuff, and excited to have that record come out. And I think November it comes out.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Fareed, it's a pleasure and an honor and everything always to talk to you. You're a delight. You're a great value to the world.
Well,
Love you to
we're gonna
pieces.
have some fun.
I do.
We're gonna have some fun before I'm out of here. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone, motherfucker.
Well, let's hope that you and I both, both get over our shit and we're around for a lot longer talking. But do you remember back in '74 when we were worried about that and shit? You and I we're 92 and 98 now, and
I'm
yeah,
telling you,
I
man.
remember. I remember.
My plan is to drink enough vodka that they just stand me up by the guitar case. All right, man. That
Hey,
sounds great.
take care, Free. We'll talk soon. We'll talk again. It's always a pleasure.
All
Thank
right.
you for so much time for taking the time, and thanks, brother. It's great seeing you. Bob Bakert, Fareed Haque, Jazz Guitar Today. Subscribe, Joe Barth. Thank you, man. Bye bye.